I'm Holly Hammond from the Commons Social Change Library, and I'm here to share with you some tools you can use for planning creative actions. So for starters, when we're planning our actions, we need to be strategic. So this is a classic quote from Sun Tzu: strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory, and tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. So obviously we need to take action in order to get where we want to go. But if we haven't planned those actions with really the whole path in mind, we're going to be really ineffective. We're going to waste the energy of our people, and we're not going to be building power. So we need to be thoughtful about how we go about developing our actions. Want to note that there are many, many activist tactics that have already been developed, and people have put a lot of great thinking into it, and we can learn from what's come before. So I note here Gene Sharp's 198 tactics. There's many more than 198, but just engaging with his list can be very useful contribution to developing creative actions, because you can draw on all the ideas of what people have done before. So the question of why do we want to be creative when we're developing our actions? I think we have to notice that creativity is a real resource for social movements. It's something that we've got that doesn't necessarily need a lot of money, when we're up against opponents who are really well resourced. But if we've got ideas, if we've got our imaginations involved, if we're engaging creativity, it can really make our movements more powerful. And some of the things that can happen when we are innovating and being creative in the development of our actions that can really put targets off balance. They might be used to engaging with activists in particular ways, but if we're coming up with new ideas, it can really rattle them. It can be a way to engage people, so really inspire people, make people feel excited, get their emotions involved in our campaign. And it can be a way to tell really compelling stories. So we're conscious that a lot of the time what we're really trying to do is a battle of the story. We're trying to get a different narrative out there. And if we design our actions well with strong action logic, we're really turbocharging spreading those stories. So there are tools that you can use when you are planning actions that can really prompt you to be more strategic and more effective. So this is the tactic star from Beyond the Choir, and it really sets out a number of prompts that you can work through. And how I've used this tool in the past is be working with a group and be thinking about what is the strategic objective they're trying to progress. And we might start with a big brainstorm of different ideas of tactics. We've all got so many ideas about how we can take action. So we start with a big list, and then you can put each idea through this filter. So you can ask the questions, strategy, how will this tactic move us towards achieving our goal? And you can even put a numerical rating on that. So you can measure how strategic you think it is. And the same goes all the way around the star. So what will the tactic communicate? What will it mean to others? How will it carry a persuasive story? The tone, will the action be solemn, jubilant, angry, or calm? Will the energy attract or repel the people we want to engage? I think this is an interesting one because it's the emotional dimension of action that we often don't really attend to or focus on that much, but it can make such a difference in terms of how engaging it is for people and what it communicates. The timing, so can we leverage unfolding events and new developments as opportunities? Does the political moment hold potential for us or vulnerability for our opponents? And sometimes we might have a great action, but it's not the right time for it. So we really need to be clear about the context and understand it and think about, is this something that moves us forward at this time? And that can also be important in terms of having a path of escalation. So we're not going to start necessarily with the big mobilisation. There might be a number of pre-actions that we do that build momentum and build power until we're ready to kind of utilize that in like bigger mobilizations, for example. The audience, who do we want to reach with our tactic? What response do we want our action to inspire in them? So we're really thinking through, who are those people? What do they need to hear from us? What are they going to do as a response to the action? And similarly, allies, how will the tactic affect our allies or potential allies? How will they receive it? Will it strengthen the relationship or jeopardize it? We're looking to bring people towards us, not push them away. So how will this action kind of be part of that process? Then resources, is action worth our limited time, energy and money? Can we get more out of it than we put in? Do we have the capacity to pull it off effectively? So important to consider. Sometimes we've got a great idea, but it's actually outside the parameters of what we're able to do. But also we want to be thinking about, how does our action build our resources? Will it be an opportunity to recruit more people? Will it bring in funds? Will it give us more energy than it takes? And the target. What message will the tactics send to the people who have the power to meet our demands? So this term target, I would think of it as the decision maker around the objective that we're working on, the person who's got the power to deliver us a win. The key person we want to put pressure on. So will our action pressure them to capitulate, or enable them to dismiss us or retaliate? So you can see how this tool kind of guides you through developing a tactic in a strategic way. And if, say, you had 3 options on the table for what you were going to do next in your campaign, you could use this tool as a way to assess those. But then also want to emphasize that your campaign might have different criteria than the ones that are listed here. So there's some scope for you to remix this tool, bring in the things that feel like priorities for you, that are important to emphasize. And they'll be, very specific. So for example, they could be very specific. So on message, there might be a particular message that you are trying to communicate at a particular time. So you really want to be drilling down to, how is this action going to be working with that message, for example. You might also, with your analysis, have a sense of your primary target and your secondary target. So you might want to build in consideration of how this action is going to land for those different people, for example. So developing your tactics criteria is another thing that you can do as a group. You might use this as a jumping off place, but add in extra things that are important to you. Also, just want to let you know about this remixed or updated version of the Tactics Star. It's a little more complex because it draws in other strategy tools, but that can be a great thing for your group as well, to take the time to utilise those different approaches. So for example, some of the differences here is it specifically talks about the spectrum of allies, which is a great strategy tool for mapping where different people stand, and think about how your action is going to activate passive allies, win over currently on the fence potential allies, and isolate your opposition. So really thinking very strategically around that spectrum of allies. Points of intervention. This is a great approach from Story-Based Strategy, the Centre for Story-Based Strategy, where you think about what arena are you intervening in. And they talk about the point of production, the point of destruction, the point of consumption, the point of decision, and also, really importantly, the point of assumption. So this is like, how are we intervening in dominant beliefs and narratives? How are we spreading our own story? So this can be a great thing to be thinking through when you're planning your action. Where are you intervening? And you might be intervening in a couple of ways. So you might do an action that is at the point of decision. So for example, at Parliament House, but you're doing it in such a way that is disruptive to the dominant story. So you're also doing the point of assumption intervention. You'll also see down the bottom, story is noted, and again, you can draw on tools from the Centre for Story-Based Strategy for that. There's a great approach called Battle of the Story. Here the prompts are, how are we strategically narrating and framing the conflict? Is there a hero in our story? Is there a villain? What is the story that people take away from our action and what we're doing? And foreshadowing is a great narrative tool that you can use in your actions as well, which shows the change that you're trying to create. Actually helps people imagine the future that you're working towards by bringing it to life in your action. So there's a lot of juicy good stuff there. So action logic, this is a great thing to be thinking about when you're designing an action. And it's about how obvious or how easily understood is it by people. Sometimes we can do an action that takes a lot of explaining for people to get, and that's really counterproductive. One of the great examples of action logic was the lunch counter sit-ins that happened as part of the civil rights movement. So the problem was that lunch counters were segregated and Black people could not be in that space. And so the action was for Black people to occupy that space and be there. And that is foreshadowing the result that they were fighting for. And it meant that everyone was talking about exactly what the action was about, the desegregation of those spaces. So those are a couple of the tools that you can use to develop creative actions. I really encourage you to give them a go. I've included here links that will be in your follow-up to this session, the 198 methods of nonviolent action, the tactics star, and there's also the action star is there for downloading as part of that. I've also mentioned here some other tools and resources from the Commons Social Change Library. So we have a collection of tactics in a time of physical distancing examples from around the world, and there's some really creative actions that people came up with in the context of the pandemic and being COVID safe. Like that's been a real catalyst for creativity, which I find very inspiring. We also have a whole topic on arts and creativity in activism, and there's some excellent examples as part of that. Really encourage you to have a look and explore. Also want to let everybody know that the Commons set up a Facebook group called the Activist Tactic Exchange with the express purpose of encouraging tactical innovation internationally. So we've got people in there from lots of different parts of the world sharing tactics they're coming up with or they've observed so that we can really fast track our innovation and build power all around the world. So there you go. Invite you to go to commonslibrary.org and have a play, have a look around. You're also very welcome to contact me if you're after more information about these kinds of resources and how to use them in your social change work. And I wish you well, you amazing creative activists.